Back on Sports 225, visiting with Ray Castle from LSU, who was at the Boston Marathon with 3 of his student athletic trainers. When we went to break, we were talking about your immediate reaction and everything. I would imagine there are a couple things. Number one is anybody who's already, at that point, run 26 miles. They haven't necessarily run 26.2. The idea of being blown off their feet, even if they weren't hurt by elements from the bomb, would leave them, jelly-legged and disoriented. You were just talking about people who hadn't, weren't affected by the bomb, how bad off they can be. So you have this whole bunch of runners who are all messed up, not even from the bomb. And then you've got spectators, and then the runners. It's just, whew.
Well, it was primarily there were spectators that were injured there on the sidewalk. I think there were several during the race. I'm not sure about what happened at bomb site 2, but it goes back to the emergency action plan, the response plan. Everything was in place. Everybody had a zone of responsibility, and I've looked at some of the articles that came out. I know the New York Times came out with one. There was a snapshot of an audio recordings, and even there was a nurse who I saw in the article. They did an audio segment with her, and she said, she's passed the medals and the medical, and they're still providing care for her. So we knew what the mission was. Everybody is to take, stay in your job. We just happen to be the first ones and move forward for that. So I think that's one thing I'm really proud of, not just for our 3 athletic training students at LSU, but all the athletic training students who were there and other personnel as well. I mean, they have a job. They stuck to it, even in I think if you asked any of them, they were, everybody was. You have a sense of helplessness. You're scared, obviously, but they stayed on, stayed and did what they're trained to do.
Well, you had to be proud of your kids too, to know.
Oh, I'm uber proud. I mean, they, how they conducted themselves. They didn't, they did not run. They have a job to do. They stuck to it, and I think for those schools,
we want to throw out their names.
Caitlin McKinley, who is a third-year clinical. She just passed her board exam a couple weeks ago.
Good.
So she's graduating this Thursday. Super excited for her. Brendan Jacob, who is a second-year athletic training student, and Derek Carter, who's a first-year athletic training student.
Boy, talk about on the job training.
Yeah.
Jeez. So how long did your day last? At what point that day of the marathon did you finally say, okay, I'm going back to my hotel now. I got to get off my feet.
It's not a question. I guess the day before, I assisted with a smaller group covering the 5K, which had about 6,000 runners, and the Invitational 1 mile. So I had came into the city and stayed with a colleague of mine that day and that night. So we had to be at the main medical tent for 7 a.m. that morning.
Right.
So we had to do check-in, credentialing. We had a group medical meeting with all the medical personnel, several, 600, 700, 800 medical from all the tents. So we're moving into one at auditorium. So they gave a full overview again, and then that day. So once we were out, that 30 or 40 minutes, I guess, lapsed. The 30 minutes, then we moved us in the medical tent. But now we're in the way, so to speak. So we regressed us back when that was after the second bomb. There was a bomb threat on the grandstands, and they regressed us back, and they had the last personnel. Our last medical personnel treating victims out there, and they regressed, got those off. And I think that's probably one of the bigger things is the fact that overall there were 97 victims that were moved off those 2 bomb sites into the primary medical tent in probably less than 22 minutes.
Wow.
And it was just, we're rolling.
At what point did you and your 3 trainers finally get all back together again?
I saw Derek in the main medical tent. I saw it, we had a chance to, and he had already communicated with, he was already back in the main medical tent, and he'd been doing wheelchair duty, and you probably saw his picture on some of the initial pictures that came out, and doing wheelchair duty. And I saw him, and I'm like, you're okay, I'm okay, are they okay? Good, stay where they are. They'll give them instructions on what they need to do in terms of meeting back up, and how to proceed. But stick to they're going to stay with their duties. And then I told him, I said, I don't care what I do, you're in my right hip pocket. Do not leave me one. You're here. So I know you're in here, but in case I have to get, but unless I tell you otherwise. So that was making sure them. And then we regrouped as a group, a large group, about 2 or 3 blocks down at the other medical tent. And then from there we walked out to Boston University, about 2.5, 3 miles.
Yeah, that's a good walk. Now, when was the next time you saw your wife?
I saw her that night.
Okay.
About guess about 7:30, 8 o'clock. So we got back and they were staying with students, so I picked up the
So you went back out
students
to your friend's house.
and drove out there about 7:30, 8 o'clock. So
What did you think when you finally got to that house and you sat down and I hope had your first cocktail and just had to think about what had happened that day?
It was interesting because a lot of the things you think of as a healthcare provider, I still had my clothes on. I could have changed, and I did not change. And these are things that are kind of I've become a practitioner and a student and a patient all at one time. From a mental health standpoint, that I still had blood on my. I had hurt my knee pretty bad at the bomb site somehow. I don't know how I did it. Banged it up pretty good, and so I didn't realize it's about 20, 30 minutes later when I'm in the medical tent. Somebody comes up, "You're bleeding, or are you okay?" I'm limping. I look at them like they're crazy. I'm fine, and then I realize
you don't know how it happened.
Yeah, I don't know where it happened. I pull my pants up in the tights, and nothing's cut or anything in my pants, and all of a sudden I feel like somebody hit me with a hammer. So instantaneously, like we're talking now, it's like, oh, hit you with a hammer. So,
yeah.
But we got back, and my main goal was trying to figure, okay, what's our plan? How are we going to what's going to happen with the flights going out the next day for the students? And I gave my wife a big hug, and I just needed that, and I knew that I needed to get those 3 students back home to their families. They need a hug. I'm there. We're together,
Right.
and if that's my primary focus at that point in time, getting us back. Whether it meant driving, didn't know what the airlines were going to do, so I didn't know if it was driving back,
It's a long
to
drive.
Boston.
I've done
So
it.
we ended up driving the next day from Boston to the D.C. area, and that's about 11-hour drive. So so we got back, and what was great was the Upper University officials like Herb Vincent. I get a phone call. I'm like, "What's this number?" I don't know who this number is, and this is about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and his point blank was, "What do you need?" We need to get flights rearranged. So they were working until 10, 11 o'clock, the university and the travel agencies and the airlines. They got people from from home, and they were doing their job to get us back home. Really phenomenal. And then we got back. We had meeting with our Dean Lindsay with the College of Human Sciences Education, my school chair, Melinda Solomon.
Debriefing, if you will.
Yeah, a quick debriefing, really getting the students back in. What do you have to do with their parents were
Right.
there on Wednesday afternoon, and getting them back in. And then I was like, okay, we got somebody to take care of them and for me, and I've got to take care of myself now, because I had a pretty hard fall, and it's a lot to process.
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, and you and I talked about it. I mean, just the emotional recovery, the mental health issues that go along with something like that, and I can't even imagine. But
it's been phenomenal. It's been, I mean, the resources I've had. My church has been tremendous. Brady and Katie at First Methodist, and they've been a tremendous source of strength for me and my family, my colleagues, even the athletic training students at LSU. I go into getting back into teaching and administration. Even we've been communicating with our other folks who were there, and it's been extremely cathartic and just some talking, and it's still, there are areas, you get through one area, then something else kind of, it's a gradual process like anything else that happens with a death of a family member. It's just, it happens. You're just trying to process, okay, this is an ungodly act, but I could be covering an event at a high school game, and the stands could collapse. It could be a bus accident. We hear these things all the time of these tragic accidents, and it could happen. So being prepared is I'm prepared medically through my training, and our students are learning to do that, and they've got some advanced skills, even first, second, or third year, and being to do what they do as a healthcare provider. But going to schools and what they do, and having emergency action plans in place, having AED, having just knowing the basics to do the right thing when you need to do it. And that's what I saw the most. I was really, I look back and I see the lay people that were there before we even got there in the first minute, and the success that we had. It was a miracle that we had. Unfortunately, they only have 3. You can't wait to spend it for three fatalities. But under the given circumstances, there probably should have been 15 at least, given the traumatic, the trauma that they had, and based on from the hospitals that we had gotten word back from. So that's what was, it's that they did that, and so everybody stepped up when they had to.
Ray Castle, we talked not long after the marathon, and we both agreed, him more than me, that he needed his time to sort it all out. When he was ready, he would come on. I'm glad it finally was time, and I appreciate it. Wow. I got to follow that with going to a break and getting Jacques Doucet from WAFB out here. It's kind of like the old Johnny Carson, don't follow kids and dogs or Ray Castle. Good luck, Jacques.
That's it.
I'm Lee Feinswag. You're watching Sports 225, and we'll be right back.
Great. Thank you.